Welcome back. I am Catherine DeRose, your host and health minister, teaching on physiological nutrition, which has 8 self-healing requirements. I hope you are enjoying this very special webinar presentation series. In this episode, I will be presenting the second most important self-healing requirement for your ultimate self-care to live a productive, healthy life. Understanding the body's many cries for water is very diverse is today's topic. So we will be talking about, in our lineup today, when to drink, what kind of water, why it's important, and how to drink it. It will surprise you to learn about the details of these important questions. I hope you will be intrigued enough to continue on with me till the end and take advantage of this free presentation giving you yourself this priceless tool chest. We open our series today with our primary verse. Let's read. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Psalms 139, verse 14. Understanding the inner milieu, or the inner environment of our physical bodies, will give you greater and much needed awareness of what it takes to keep them healthy and strong. Do you remember what your why is for learning this vital information? My personal why is quite simple. It's called prevention. I absolutely do not like the discomfort of pain or any other negative body experience, and I'm sure you don't either. I would rather pursue prevention than experiencing that bad thing. Remember the saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? That is one of my motivating mottos. It could also be added to our wellness principles, couldn't it? Take a look at this scale. It is very telling. Prevention is a simple step or action that produces a huge effect on the relief of dis-ease. To practice prevention will also take knowledge and some understanding to begin your new lifestyle of health and well-being journey. It will help you maintain and take that resolving action needed for your decisions. As believers in Christ, I believe we have a great opportunity to be living testimonies of how we take care of our bodies, the temple of the Holy Spirit. Our need for truth in our physiology is so important in order to make good decisions for our well-being. I consider it prudent for me to share it and not keep it to myself. Then it's up to you to make your own decisions in what you put into your own lifestyle practices. Believe it or not, both air and water are actually nutritious. Did you know you can get brighter, wiser, and smarter just with adequate water intake? Water also has a memory. A person lives without water for only how many days? 8 to 14 days. The amount of days one can go without water is determined by a few factors. Your environment, whether it's hot, cold, or windy, depends on the person. How much you sweat, how much you urinate when you're crying, or how much physical activity, and so on. Diet intake from whole foods is important because they contain electrolytes. It also depends on how healthy a person is. Water is a vital nutrient to the life of every cell and acts first as a building material, a physiologically important process to our health and well-being. Here are some interesting facts you may not know. From our brain and lungs, even to our teeth, they all need water. We all know that in our entire system, we have roughly about 75 to 90% water, which makes it a huge factor in how it operates. There are several roles listed below that you should know about. Looking at this image, we can see that every organ needs water. To name a few, but not all, kidneys require 1.5 quarts. Skin requires 0.5 quarts. The colon, 0.3 quarts. And the lungs, 0.2 quarts. That totals up to 2.5 quarts that are needed to be replenished. Think of water as a lubricant for joints, connective tissues, muscles, shock absorbers, as a coolant for your body's temperature. Let's take a closer look at only a couple of these organs: the brain, the lungs, and the stomach. The role of water in the brain consists of about 75% of water and weighs 3 pounds. What are the benefits to the brain? Let's take a look. Your brain needs to be properly hydrated to function properly. With each deep breath, you lose moisture. Your brain ends up dehydrated in the morning, and brain cells start dying when you are 2% dehydrated. You need to drink water when you wake up. Your brain takes up the most energy of any organ. Did you know that? Because it's also 75% water, it means it needs a lot of this basic vital substance to keep on functioning. Water fuels and gives back the conduction of electrical signals, the very basis of how our brain functions. Like our brain works faster, thinking faster, maintaining memory longer, maintaining focus, and boosts concentration, increasing your attention. Water increases the blood flow to your brain. This boosts your brain's oxygenation and hydration. It also calms it down. It helps balance your mood and your emotions. It also balances your chemical processes and does a kind of mental restart. The brain needs water and nutrients to create hormones that are typically released in the bloodstream by glands, carrying specific instructions for each cell's action. These neurotransmitters are relaying small signals from one neuron that regulates our emotions and feelings. So on those days where your concentration is lacking, your mood is a little off, or your memory isn't working well, it may be a good idea to fill up your glass with water. And it would also be important to add a pinch of Celtic sea salt, because it has lots, 90% minerals. It has a lot of minerals and is an electrolyte. Water is an essential and perhaps the most important part of productive mental work.
So another thing that I did not know, that I was like, another thing to underline in Lisa's book, was that the brain is 80% water, yes, and the body is 60% water.
Broadly, yeah.
So I want to talk about, because I feel like this is probably, and I'm curious if you would agree to this, like one of the simplest, easiest things that we can do immediately to start taking better care of our health is stay hydrated. And I'll tell you, yesterday on our team call, so my company, everyone is completely distributed, so we're always on, our team meetings are on Zoom. And I was like, guys, Mosconi's book, I'm like, everybody take a big drink of water right now. And I'm like, all water's not created equal. So let's break this down. I know you said as little as 3 to 4% hydration can almost immediately impact your brain. And this is something that I realized recently. I love to dance and I love to work out. And there's times where I don't feel like I've adequately rehydrated myself after. And then I feel like I've got a headache. You know what I mean? I'm like, I need to
Yes.
take a nap. And I'm like, oh, it's not because I worked out too hard. It's because I haven't rehydrated properly. So walk us through this.
Absolutely. And this was very funny because when I wrote Brain Food, I thought this was obvious. And I thought everybody knew that hydration is so important for brain health. And I realized that nobody really talked about it. And everybody was fascinated by this knowledge because it's so intuitively, like you can tell that that's the case. So the brain is really mostly made of water. And water is effectively a nutrient for the brain because it's needed to power every single cellular reaction that takes place inside the brain. It's the medium that provides cushioning for the brain. It shelters the brain so that if you hit your head, you don't get hematoma. But also really has a nutrition, a trophic effect in some ways. And what's interesting is that even just mild dehydration, which is a 2 to 4% water loss inside the brain, right, not just in the body, but specifically inside the brain, can trigger neurological symptoms from headaches and dizziness, migraines, vertigos, brain fog, mental fatigue, which I deal with a lot because a lot of participants, a lot of patients come to us for brain fog. And also, this is interesting. So we do brain scans, and there's a type of brain scan, it's called a PET scan, PET, where we need to do an IV. And the first thing I do with every single patient who walks in the door, I'm like, okay, when is the last time you had a glass of water, actual water? Don't tell me purified water. I don't care about seltzer, soda is not water, actual water. And they'll be like, 2-3 hours ago? Great, we're going to drink a nice glass of water, hot. Yes, warm water is a vasodilator. So what it does, it makes your veins pop. So number one, I can get the line in much faster, but also for you, it really supports rehydration. So if you ever feel dehydrated, warm water is the best way to get the electrolytes in and give you volume.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's a good trick.
So let's talk about, because the kind of water you drink matters. So I went down this big rabbit hole. So from other testing I've done, I learned that I've got some excess old lead in my system, right? That we need to get out.
Same.
And so we have, in 2 places, we have reverse osmosis. And I was like, oh. So, the reverse osmosis, great for getting out contaminants, great for getting out different things that we wouldn't want to be drinking. Not so good because it takes out some of those essential minerals like the magnesium, right, and calcium. So let's get down to brass tacks, because I know in your book, talking about natural spring water, amazing if we can, best that we can do. So if you're going out to dinner or you're going out or you have an opportunity to have that in your home, all thumbs up.
Wonderful. Yeah.
What is your opinion? And this is like personal questions for me. What's your opinion on the best ways to get some of those electrolytes or those core minerals back in? And this is not about particular brands. I'm just going to say it because they're easy for me to get, but we can talk broadly based on where people are in the world so they can find things that are good for them. Like I know obviously a lot of electrolyte and things that you can pour in your water that I've been doing. Like I've chosen sugar-free versions, and really looking at the ingredients to go like, what's the simplest?
Sodium.
Yes, the simplest things that I can put back in this to give my body what it needs, because I know that the water coming out of my filter it's purified, but it's stripped of all the minerals.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. One thing you can do that we did was to call the city 311 and they come to your house and do testing and then they give you a list of possible filters that you can put like under the sink.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have one for the entire house.
Okay.
No,
I'm going to do that.
It works really well. It takes all the impurities and heavy metals out, but leaves the electrolytes in.
Oh, great.
It's a big.
That's okay.
But, yeah,
but
exactly.
it's something to do. I also was looking too, and Josh and I were looking at this, and I was like, oh, there's remineralizers. Have you heard of those?
Yes.
What do you think of those?
There isn't a lot of research on it. It makes sense to me in principle. The question is always
the sourcing of what are like
the sourcing, the origin, and how complete that might be. So in water, of course, we know that there are some salts and minerals, but there's a lot of compounds that have never been tracked or studied.
Okay.
So there may be more to water than just
those things that they're remineralizing with.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So I would like to see more research.
More research. Okay. Last question on this one, just because again, I think it's helpful for everyone.
Important. Yes, I think it's important to realize that your brain doesn't just want something wet.
Yes.
So, and water means fluids with nutrients that can promote hydration.
Yes.
And I know this sounds weird, but seltzer doesn't have any. And
this is
carbonated water does.
Yeah.
So if it's naturally carbonated from a spring source, like San Pellegrino, for example, which I'm not promoting. I don't know them.
No.
But just as an example, that's a natural spring source that just happens to have bubbles.
Yes, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, because one of the things I think I always get frustrated with, not with your work, by the way, but whenever I'm kind of going down a health rabbit hole, because I'm like, but I need to know what to do. You know what I mean? Like I need to know exactly what my options are. And so that's why I wanted to just open this up, because I'm sitting there and we all know what the internet is like these days. You don't know. You can trust. You don't even know or what you can't
Yeah.
trust. So last thing I'll ask you is about, and again, it's not about this particular brand, but it's the one that I have access to. It's like these fulvic minerals that you can put in. It was about the electrolytes and putting minerals back into our water.
That makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think if you have access to clean water, even tap, that's great. If you don't, that's a perfectly viable route. And if you can access spring water, obviously that's great. It doesn't have to be fancy. But you can go to Target, and it's not super expensive. I mean, tap would be better. But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have access to clean water. So I think in that case, rehydration salts and minerals can be helpful. Coconut water is another really nice way to rehydrate. It is sugary though.
Yeah, we got to watch out for that. I remember, I was in the grocery store yesterday, actually, after I had driven for a few hours and I came home and I felt it. And I was like, I went to the store, and I looked at it, I was like, holy, it was this particular brand was way too much sugar for me. So I was like, I'm going to put that down. But you also noted aloe vera juice.
Oh, I love it.
Yes. So that's another way.
Much.
Your local health store.
That's another very nice way. Another one, so this was always interesting to me, how in this country, a lot of people have said to me that they don't like to drink water because it doesn't have any flavor. I taste it. And a lot of people in Italy, where I'm from, are like, oh, this is this kind of water, and this water is not as good as this other water. Right? So I think your palate has something to do with that, perhaps. But something that I find interesting, especially now that my daughter is little, and sometimes she would like to drink something else, not just water. I do liquid chlorophyll.
Oh.
Minty.
Yes.
Minty chlorophyll. And I think that that's also nice in terms of rehydration. And
like
also,
little drops, and you can probably get them in the health store, on Amazon.
Yeah, on Amazon.
Yeah.
Easily, like a teaspoon makes everything taste minty and fresh. It looks green, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it also, that specific brand I'm thinking about, at least, that I thought was a good one, very clean, also contains salts and minerals. So
you want to
really
say it? Because people are going to almost see in the comments, what's Lisa like?
I don't recall.
You don't
the
recall?
brand.
Okay, we'll find out and we'll put it in the comments. Yes.
I remember exactly what the bottle looks like, but now I'm kind of blacking out on the actual brand.
We'll find it.
Let's take a look at the lungs. The lungs are self-cleaning organs. This means they can begin to heal themselves once exposure to pollutants stops. Let's talk about our lungs' need for water. The lungs are about 83% water. Does that surprise you? Yes, you heard that right. The lungs are made of a light and soft elastic tissue similar to that of a sponge. They have alveoli, some 400 million of them, and that have minuscule droplets of water in the blood capillary network. The alveoli that picks up the oxygen collapses like a spring-like action, and the blood drops the carbon dioxide as we exhale. When this happens, we are able to breathe in more oxygen. When you are dehydrated, that little droplet of water is not working for you, using its collapsing spring-like action to help you exhale. This prevents inhaling more oxygen. Your body will also prevent the droplet water loss by constricting the bronchial tubes so you don't lose those droplets of water. That's your body trying to work for you, but it's not very comfortable, is it? Now that person has constricted breathing. On a cold day, when we breathe out, we can see a kind of white smoke. That's the water vapor that we've got in our lungs. Water opens the airways, adds warmth and moisture to the air, which can improve breathing and help loosen mucus inside. Water can be helpful for soothing a sore throat. Exercise forces the muscles to work harder, which increases the body's breathing rate, resulting in a greater supply of oxygen to the muscles. It also improves circulation, making the body more efficient in removing the excess carbon dioxide that the body produces when exercising. I would like to add a cautionary note here to how you drink water. Drinking lots of water doesn't necessarily help hydrate your body. Too much water dilutes and flushes these electrolytes, which is not good either. On a cellular level, there are more requirements for your cells to become hydrated. All cells contain two surface layers of fat. It is understood that fat and water don't mix, right? But the cells need water inside. Remember those minerals to the right that we briefly mentioned in our mindful breathing episode? These minerals are electrolytes called magnesium, sodium, chloride, potassium, calcium, and with vitamin D. Calcium with vitamin D is needed for calcium to get into the cell. All are needed to escort water into the cell through what is called aquaporin channels, like doorways or portals. These are also channels that are all over your body to allow your body's tissues to be hydrated. I would like to introduce to you Dr. Eric Berg. He is known as the Knowledge Doc. His main passion has been and continues to be teaching people about health-related topics, including healthy keto and intermittent fasting as a basic long-term eating plan. He has done monthly training seminars for doctors, delivering his techniques to over 2,500 doctors and healthcare practitioners. But his real goal is to put people into the driver's seat of creating health for themselves. He has personally worked with over 40,000 people using natural methods, nutrition, and the healthy version of the ketogenic diet. And his clients have included senior officials in the U.S. government, medical doctors, actors, high-level executives of prominent corporations, scientists, professors, engineers, as well as nurses, stay-at-home moms, and high school students. He loves dissecting complex health problems, breaking them down so they are easy to understand, and connecting symptoms to a real cause. Here is Dr. Eric Berg.
On this whole water myth that everyone needed to drink a certain amount of water or else they're going to be dehydrated. And it kind of shook up quite a few people because everyone knows that 8 glasses of water is like the law. You have to drink at least 8 glasses of water because your body is mostly water. And so that video created a confusion because when you tell a person the opposite theory of what they're basing this concept of water on, it can really put someone into a kind of a confusion. So I wanted to do this video to give you some interesting new points on water in general in its ability to hydrate your cells. First thing you need to know is, what is hydration? Is hydration just water in your cells? Actually, no, it's not. How does that water get into the cell and out of the cell? The water gets in and out of the cell through little channels that get help with electrolytes. And electrolytes are like these electrically charged minerals that in different concentrations inside and outside the cell, you'll get a flow, a certain flow, either going outside the cell or going inside the cell. And so a truly hydrated cell has the right amount of electrolytes inside and outside with the right amount of fluid. And a dehydrated cell is basically an imbalance of electrolytes and fluid. It's not just a lack of water. In fact, if you drink too much water, you're going to dilute certain electrolytes and create dehydration in certain parts of your body. There's a condition called hyponatremia. That means low sodium in the blood. One cause would be you just drank a lot of pure water without any salt, and now you diluted this sodium throughout the cells. It's very, very dangerous. You can have inflammation of your brain. You can actually go into a coma. So we don't get hydrated just from water. Now, on the flip side, I'm not against water. I drink water, and I think you should too. But this concept of, carrying your gallon jug of water and just forcing yourself to drink all day long might not be the wisest thing you can do, especially if you start bypassing the normal thirst mechanism that our body was designed to tell you if you're thirsty or not. When you're not thirsty and you force your body to drink a lot of water, you can end up in trouble, especially if you exercise. There's an incredible book by this, written by an exercise physiologist with a lot of research in long-distance runners and even ultra-marathon runners in relationship to hydration and if they should be drinking just a ton of water when they're not thirsty. They can end up with low sodium and actually create a big problem with their health. And then you have a lot of other fluids that you drink through the day that can create a diuretic effect. You can actually lose more water and become dehydrated when you drink things with caffeine, like coffee, tea, sodas. Anything you drink with caffeine is very dehydrating. And of course, alcohol, right? If you reflect back on the last time you drank a lot of alcohol the next morning, you're going to be completely dehydrated. That's why you have a headache. That's why your lips are dry. And so alcohol is a diuretic and it tends to dehydrate you as well. And then what about fruit juice? Okay, would that be hydrating? Well, here's the data with glucose. Let's just take a diabetic, for example. What happens with someone with high sugar? They're peeing a lot. They have urinary frequency and they're thirsty a lot too. So the more sugar in your blood, the more your body's going to get rid of water and the more dehydrated you're going to be. And so fruit juices, sodas, things with sugar will greatly dehydrate you. Now, what's fascinating is that you have all these electrolyte sport drinks with added sugar. And apparently the idea is that if you're exercising, you need some sugar to replace the loss of glucose, right, when you exercise. And they call this hydration. But is it really hydrating you? Does consuming glucose hydrate you? I'm going to tell you, it dehydrates you. It pulls water from the cell. There's an interesting study, which I'll put down below. It's called the Nurses Health Study 2, which they did on a certain age group from 9 to 15. Now, this study wasn't about hydration, but it was interesting because it revealed an unknown consequence of drinking these healthy sports drinks. Now, the study found that if a teenager or young adult was consuming at least one soda a day, they would have an extra pound of weight. And this is what they found, and I'm going to just generalize here. Teenagers that consumed one soda a day on a regular basis gained an additional 2 pounds of weight, whereas those who consumed at least one sports drink a day, okay, these so-called healthy sports drinks with electrolytes but with added sugar, gained 3.5 pounds of fat extra on their bodies. So the sports drink produced more fat than the sodas. Now, this is probably because these sports drinks usually come in like 32 ounces and sodas come in a 12 ouncer. So when you look at the label, you have to look at the serving size. And rarely does anyone just drink one serving size. They drink the whole thing. And there's more serving size in sports drinks. Now, even when people are consuming electrolyte powders, many times these electrolyte powders and electrolyte drinks, and I won't mention any names, contain added sugar. And some per serving size contain like 11 grams of sugar per serving size. Now, there's 4 grams of sugar per teaspoon. So that's just under 3 teaspoons of sugar for one serving size, okay? And we're not talking about like a whole bottle. We're just talking about one serving size or one of those little stick packs of electrolytes. Not to mention the source of the sugar. Was it beet sugar? Probably it was. And most of the beet sugar in the US is total GMO with traces of glyphosate, which is an herbicide. And even if they're doing sugarcane, unless it's organic, is going to have also traces of glyphosate. So that's on top of the sugar effect. So we have this effect of drinking more water, if you're going to add electrolytes to it, and then you have the electrolytes with glucose, which basically is going to stop any ability to burn fat. And the only thing it probably would do for hydration is if someone had diarrhea, for example. There are types of oral rehydration therapies where they're adding glucose to minerals because in the intestine, the glucose will help retain sodium. So that's a different situation than if you're exercising and trying to be hydrated, or if you're not exercising and trying to be hydrated. To truly hydrate the cell, you need all the electrolytes. You need sodium, potassium, chlorides, calcium, and magnesium. Now, the professor who wrote the book Waterlogged, which I'm going to put a link down below, had some fascinating information in relationship to drinking more than what you're thirsty for. You have a thirst mechanism, and some people will say, well, you know, we don't really know when we're thirsty. We just have to force our body to drink so much water, and that's just the way it is. But he evaluated tremendous amounts of data, and he looked at studies that weren't funded by companies like Gatorade, for example. And he found that even runners, long-distance runners, when they drink too much water, when they're not thirsty, they get into trouble. I think a really good principle would be to drink when you're thirsty, and don't ever force yourself to drink too much, okay? Because you can start to dilute these electrolytes. Now, on the flip side, if you're prone to a kidney stone, you need to be drinking at least 2.5 liters of fluid every single day. But I would also add electrolytes to that. Now, are there any tests that you can do to see if you're drinking too much water? Sometimes people say, well, check your color of your urine and it should be clear. But I think there's a better test. In fact, it's pretty inexpensive. You could buy on Amazon or another platform these little urine strips that measure something called specific gravity. And that will give you a good rough estimate on whether you're slightly dehydrated or you're really dehydrated or you've drinking too much water. Because on this urine strip that you're going to get, you're going to measure a lot of different things, but specific gravity measures and compares the density, how concentrated your urine is to actual water. Now, water has a specific gravity or density of 1, and urine, if it's normal, should have a density of 1.002 to 1.030. So if your urine specific gravity is low, okay, and what I mean by low is if it's less than 1.010, you have mild dehydration. So the closer you are to the specific gravity of water, which is 1.000, the less electrolytes you have, and the more you need to take electrolytes or drink less water. So specific gravity kind of tells you the concentration of particles in your urine. And of course, when you drink a lot of water, you dilute that. A lot of the electrolytes that you're going to get will come from your food if you eat healthy. But also realize there are things that you're consuming that are depleting your electrolytes too, like refined sugar, like alcohol, like the things that I mentioned that act as a diuretic. But this video is primarily on just drinking water. There is a situation of drinking too much water, and you need to find the right amount for you. And so there are a lot of variables. If you're working out, it's hot outside, and you have a very high metabolism, man, you need to drink a lot of water, but just make sure you drink the electrolytes with it. But for the general person who doesn't really work out that much, and it's not summer, I would pay attention to your thirst. I would use that as a guide and try not to force yourself to drink more than what your body really should be taking. Now, I think the best next video for you to watch would be my video on electrolytes. Now, we're going to talk about 5 electrolytes. There are others, like phosphorus and bicarbonates. Those tend to buffer the pH if things are too acid or too alkaline. But I'm going to focus on these 5 right here. Let's start with sodium. Sodium is a mineral that helps hydrate things because water is attracted to it. And of course, if you have too much sodium, you're going to retain fluid. But if you don't have enough sodium, you're not going to hydrate the cells as well. Also, sodium is involved in oxygen transport. So if you're getting swelling in the red blood cells, for example, you're not going to be able to carry oxygen to the body, and you're going to actually kind of run out of air. So you could have all sorts of problems with endurance, for example, if you're low in sodium. Let's say you do this huge workout and you're sweating and you lose your sodium. You're going to be very, very tired, and you're not going to be able to walk up the stairs because you're going to run out of oxygen. Sodium also works with chloride, as in salt, for various things. But sodium also works with other minerals like potassium. There's a pump called the sodium-potassium pump. And the purpose of that pump is to generate electrical potential. And you can look at that as like a battery. It's basically these two are necessary in making sure that there's enough electrical charge inside that cell, because your cells are mini batteries. They have voltage. And the reason why your body is designed like that is to power the nerve and muscle interaction, the contraction of the muscle and the firing of the nerves. Okay, so if you don't have enough sodium or potassium, that pump can't work, and you're not going to be able to activate the nerve impulses or the muscles to work. So there's a lot of problems that can happen with potassium deficiency and sodium deficiency, and you're going to feel tired and weak on both of these right here. Now, when we get to magnesium, magnesium controls the absorption of sodium and potassium. So this is a very important mineral as well. Most of the population is deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is at the core of chlorophyll, which is in all the leafy greens. An average person consumes probably 1.5 cups of vegetable per day, and they're usually deficient in magnesium. Magnesium also is associated with oxygen, like sodium, but it's mainly about relaxation of the muscle, whereas calcium is about the muscle contraction. So these work together to contract and relax the muscle. So magnesium is there to also prevent cramping. So when you're deficient in magnesium, you get muscle cramps. But if you're deficient in calcium, you can also get muscle cramps. Magnesium is really necessary in your workouts, especially if you do long workouts or intense workouts. Let's say you're doing a bench press where you're doing some type of intense pushing motion or something that you have to have some sustained contraction, then you need a lot of magnesium. And so if you find that you can't work out very long or very intensely, you may need magnesium or you may need calcium. I notice when people are deficient in calcium, they lose their grip strength. They just cannot lift as much weight. But calcium is also about neuromuscular excitability. So it's the nerve stimulus of the muscle, just like potassium, right? If there is a calcium deficiency, what can happen is you can get too much of this and get tetany, where you have this little twitching going on either in the left eye, your arm, or throughout the body. Now, this can also happen in the heart, too. So heart palpitations really are a problem with electrolytes. When you're low in calcium, you get a muscle cramp, and you'll also have skeletal muscle weakness. And then chloride works with sodium, and it has everything to do with hydration. Now, there's a lot of other functions of these minerals that relate to other things that aren't associated with the electrolytes, so I just wanted to focus in on these electrolytes for this video.
Hydration is a life source. Blood is more than 90% water, and blood carries oxygen. Observe this illustration. To the right, you see a clump of red blood cells that are stacked on top one another or collected in a clump. This is a visual of dehydration. How much oxygen is the blood picking up in the lung with dehydration? Next, you have to the right how you see the red blood cells are separated and a ring of oxygen around them. That is called hydration. Barbara O'Neill is a distinguished health educator, author, and speaker, renowned for her expertise in natural therapies and wellness, has over 5 decades of experience in the field, dedicating her career to promoting holistic health principles, emphasizes the importance of diet, lifestyle, and natural remedies in achieving optimal well-being. She is a prominent figure in the wellness community, conducting seminars and workshops globally. She shares extensive knowledge on topics such as nutrition, detoxification, and disease prevention. Barbara will explain how vital water is for the health of the stomach. Here is Barbara O'Neill.
Child gets up in the morning, runs around and plays for a while, sit down for breakfast. What's the first thing they want to do straight after breakfast? Water. Because they sat to eat dehydrated. Same with the adults. How many adults get up in the morning, first thing they have is, say, orange juice and a cup of coffee? Isn't that the traditional breakfast fluids? And what are they doing when they have their orange juice and their cup of coffee? They're thirsty, they're trying to hydrate, but neither will hydrate them. How clean would your body be if you washed it in orange juice? How clean would your body be if you washed it in a cup of coffee? Water and water alone will supply what the body needs. And there's a book called One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. It's by Dr. Batman Geheldage. We'll call him Dr. B, an Iranian doctor. And his story is very interesting. He was in prison, political prisoner, and all the patients, well, not patients, but the residents in the jail would come to him because he's the doctor. And he had nothing. So he just kept giving everyone a glass of water. And, you know, they were happy because he actually did something. And every 15 minutes, he'd give them another glass of water. And so he'd come and see them, give them another glass of water. And to him, it was a bit of, what else can I do? But then he noticed something. They all were getting better. In fact, the word went round, we've got the best doctor here in this jail. Everyone's getting better. So he put his detective hat on. Why are they getting better? All I'm doing is giving them water. And out of that came his book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. And what's fascinating about his book, I'm pretty sure it's in the bookshelf there, is he goes into every single body function, because don't you love it when someone says, why is this happening? And then investigate and then write a book, and we can read that book and go, well, looky there. No need to reinvent the wheel. This guy's done it all. And what he found was the first place that water is lost is the stomach. Because lining our stomach, we have a thick mucosa lining, and in that thick mucosa lining is sodium bicarbonate. And that sodium bicarbonate is in the stomach lining, so that if any stomach acid tries to go through, it's immediately negated or neutralised, so that the hydrochloric acid doesn't eat out our stomach. But one of the first places that water is taken from in dehydration is the lining of the stomach. And so when someone is dehydrated, they can have a very thin stomach lining. And when there's a very thin stomach lining, there's no sodium bicarbonate in there. And so the stomach acid can easily start to eat its way through. And then because there's damage, our body's own microorganisms change roles and become the clean-up team. Remember Monday, where we looked at the cycle of life? And they change roles and become the clean-up team. Remember what its name is? Bacteria. And they've given them a name in the stomach. It's called Helicobacter. You've heard of it? Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is blamed for stomach ulcers. Students, what's the cause of stomach ulcers? Well, the number one, it's actually dehydration. And Dr. B claimed that at the writing of his book to have cured 3,000 cases of stomach ulcer with water alone. Because the first place that the water is taken from is the lining of the stomach, and the first place it goes to is the lining of the stomach. So a glass of water, half an hour before the meal, the first thing it'll do is it'll thicken that mucosa lining on the stomach. So there's a couple of doctors from Australia, Western Australia, that got a Nobel Prize for discovering that Helicobacter pylori causes stomach ulcers. They were even putting Helicobacter pylori into someone's stomach and, yeah, stomach ulcer. But you know what my question is? Well, were they dehydrated? How much water were they drinking? Are they coffee drinkers? We had a pathologist attend our program. He said, we did studies on coffee and we found it took 5 glasses of water to make up for the dehydrating agents in 1 cup of coffee. Now, when you look at that, I think you'd agree with me, the nation's dehydrated. And Dr. B's book, one of the body's many cries for water, it actually explains why all of these ailments are happening. The other title to his book is, he's not sick, he's thirsty. The other title to his book is, subtitle, don't treat thirst with medications. Because when you do take medications, what does that do to your hydration status? Lessens it even more. I know as a psychiatric nurse, you'd be talking to the patients and you can tell their mouth is dry by the way they're talking. So what do? Oh, Coke, coffee. Is that helping? Not at all. In fact, it's contributing to the fact that they're still in the psychiatric hospital, because our brain is 85% water. From the neck down, we're 75% water. Our brain is a hydroelectric system. No hydro, no electricity. A person can actually develop negative thought patterns in a dehydrated brain. And most people know that their headache possibly is due to dehydration. My husband rang me one day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was driving. He said, I don't know what's the matter with me. I've got a migraine. I can hardly drive. So you know what my first question always is? How much water have you drank? And he went, oh dear. He said, I haven't drank any water since I woke up this morning. So he woke up in the morning and had water. He had breakfast. Must have got busy, had lunch, and now we are 3 in the afternoon. He is chronically dehydrated. So I said to him, please don't drink a whole glass of water. Please just have half a glass of water. A few minutes later, another half glass of water. A few minutes later, let it little by little go in. He said after the first glass, the migraine went to a headache, and after the second glass, the headache went to a dull ache, and after the third glass, he had no headache. Now, isn't it nice if you can resolve every headache just with water? But unfortunately, not every headache is just due to dehydration. But I like to use the process of elimination. Let's try water first. And Dr. Batman Geheldage in that jail was finding all these problems resolving just because he was giving water. In fact, when the politics changed and he was finally released, he said, look, do you mind if I stay? They've never had anyone say that before. He said, I'm right in the middle of this very interesting research. And he's presented at in medical journals, he's presented at medical conferences. And out of all of those talks he gave, he's written the book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. But it's not a popular message, is it? You can't make a lot of money out of water. I want to relate to you something that happened at our retreat. This was down in Melbourne. We had a guy come. He was from South Africa. He was early 50s. He came with his wife. He did not want to be at our health retreat. And we quickly worked that one out. He was very short and bristly. And his wife was looking very uncomfortable. She'd paid the whole amount, so they had to come. Wise wife. She didn't put a down payment, she paid the lot. And as I'm asking him questions, he was very short in his answers. I said, how much water do you drink a day? 2 litres. I thought, oh, well, he's a good water drinker, let's move on. Are you on any medication? Yes, I am. I'm on a different medication every month. I've got Helicobacter pylori in my stomach. How long have you been doing this for? 5 months. That's a different antibiotic every month to kill Helicobacter pylori. And every month when he goes back to the doctor, they just do breath tests now. It's still there. What's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. I'm not criticising him. I think he and the doctor are hoping that the next antibiotic will really wipe it out. I said, are you interested in looking at an alternative? He said, no, thank you very much. I'm very happy with my medication. God's government is a government of freedom, and what's freedom based on? Free choice. So I respect his choice. Even if I don't agree with it, I must respect his choice, and I do. After the first lecture where I talked about the body's ability to heal itself and how it will heal itself when you give it the right conditions, he and his wife came up to me and said, that made more sense than anything we've heard for a long time. We've actually agreed to let you advise us on what to do with this stomach. I said, well, I can't tell you what to do. Only you and your doctor have authority over your medication. But this is what I do. I would stop that antibiotic and I would take the herb I'm going to advise, which is slippery elm. Slippery elm coats, soothes and heals the whole lining of the gut. It's the powdered bark of the slippery elm tree. You put water with it and it goes, one could say, a little slippery, and it just coats and soothes. And I said, it's your choice. He said, we're willing to do that. He said, I've had stomach pain for 25 years. He said, I've been all over the world. No one can help me. So every lecture, this man got a little bit more interested and a little bit more interested. And at the end of the week, when he sat in front of me for the final consultation, he had a great big smile on his face. I said, you've got something to tell me, haven't you? He said, yes, I've had no stomach pain for 2 days, first time in 25 years. I said, that's great news, Paul. He said, but I've got more news. And this is what excited me even more. He said, I've worked it out. We're the doctor. This is the mirror. I'm just the teacher. And I love teaching people how to be their own doctors. I said, what was the cause, Paul? He said, I was drinking a litre of water with every meal. So every meal, he's watering down his hydrochloric acid. Did you know that hydrochloric acid is antibacterial, antifungal? So if your hydrochloric acid's strong, Helicobacter pylori can't survive in the stomach because hydrochloric acid is antibacterial. Interesting. I want to show you what's happening, and he's drinking nothing between meals. So every meal when he sat to 8, he's dehydrated, no stomach lining. So let's have a look at what's happening. So here's Helicobacter pylori just doing its job. And by the way, every month when the antibiotic comes in, it kills the Helicobacter pylori off. But because the damage is still there, more Helicobacter pylori comes along to clean it up. See, if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up. When he sits to eat, hydrochloric acid's released. And hydrochloric acid is just about to come down and wipe out Helicobacter pylori. And then what does the man do? Has a great big drink of water. What does that do to hydrochloric acid? We all remember from chemistry days, water dilutes acid. Helicobacter pylori goes, whew, that was close, chomp, chomp, chomp. He learnt in the lectures the importance of drinking between meals and not with meals. And you've probably noticed yourself, if you sit to your meal hydrated, you don't need to drink. We did talk about it yesterday. I think it's a habit, reaching for the cup. But as you'll see tomorrow, you can rewire your brain. You can train it out. So he's drinking between meals. So what does that do to his stomach lining? Puts a nice thick lining on the stomach. And then when he smells, starts to eat food, hydrochloric acid's released. Hydrochloric acid comes down, wipe out, wipe out, wipe out. His body healed itself. We've got everything we need in this body to heal us. We just need to give it the right conditions. How simple is that? If someone says to me, I've got Helicobacter pylori, I said, congratulations, we all have. It's only when it's in a large amount. And then the question is why? Why is it in a large amount? Remember Dr. B? He cured 3,000 cases of stomach ulcer just with water. Just with water. How simple is that?
Type of water that is needful also. Sit down and read scripture that calms your spirit, which is like water. John 7:37. If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. The Holy Spirit quenches your innermost spirit being, like physical water cannot. I encourage you to drink from this cistern that will never run dry. Some great tips for you to put into practice right away. 1 glass just before you wake up activates your internal organs. 1 glass 30 minutes before your meal helps digestion. 1 glass before bath lowers your blood pressure. 1 glass before bedtime reduces the risk of a heart attack during the night. And 1 glass in the first 10 hours of your day is important so you can fit it all in, because your body, your kidneys, go to work for you during those times and use the water. After the 10 hours of your day, your kidneys start to slow down and rest a bit. You agree that it would be nice to live in a body that works and functions well? Romans 12:1-2 says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Wouldn't you agree that a body that works well is a direct result of presenting your body a living sacrifice? Romans 12:2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. We know what being conformed to this world means. Being transformed by the renewing of your mind means you have a clear mind and can think better and make wiser and better decisions. You will be proving to others what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. I'd like to close with this verse, Deuteronomy 30:19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. Until next time, live your best life now. Choose life and blessing today, and live free and to the fullest for His glory. So, how did you enjoy today's episode? Would you be kind enough to leave feedback as to how you did enjoy and what information really stuck out to you? Were you surprised at the level of water your body needs? How does your water intake look compared to your body's needs? And in the lineup coming, we will be discussing a little known organ's need for water and water types. Until then,